Good afternoon. Today we're talking with Joel Smith, who recently joined Schultz and Associates Law Center, who is now just having someone ask him a question, which is good, because that means he's busy. Hi, Joel.
Because I've got staff.
Oh, yes.
So cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Well, you just answered one of my questions, but that's okay. We'll go back there. So
yeah, we'll come back to it.
Today we're going to talk about your business. Can you describe your business to our viewers?
So I am an estate planner. So I help people to write, create custom personalized estate plans that protect all that they have and everything that they value and everyone that they love.
I loved estate planning. I found it actually kind of fun. I like a challenge, and we went deep. And so, but it was fun, and it was interesting learning, all the things that you should be aware of. Joel is so busy.
Sorry about that. You're good. We're good.
So what made you decide to go into estate planning?
Well, so, now you're challenging me because full disclosure, before this, we had that whole conversation about trying to keep my answers to 30 seconds. That's almost impossible. But the short version is, when I was a bit younger, our family had some tragedies, nothing too gruesome, just as simple as, when I grew up, I had a lot of, my mother was the second of 5 kids, and 5 girls. And so when I grew up, I was just surrounded by family, by cousins and aunts and uncles. We all grew up together. And I went off to the service after high school. I came back. And while I was overseas, my grandmother had passed away. And she had left a will. And like most parents, she just assumed that all her girls got along. And, okay, parents are convinced that their kids get along and they'll sort it out. And so she didn't really say much. She just said, Melissa's in charge, sort it out. And, when kids fight, it's not generally over stuff. It's because they have different ideas of what mom would have wanted. And that's exactly what happened in this case. A few years after that, my brother passed away. He had had a terminal disease, and my mom had had a power of attorney for him while he was alive. What a lot of people don't understand is that when you die, that power of attorney expires with you. And so after his death, he didn't leave anything else, estate planning wise. And so she was left trying to pick up the pieces, death certificates, and dealing with the coroner, and dealing with the city health or the county health department, and then eventually dealing with state courts and the probate courts and all this stuff. And so for the next several years, I watched as she went through that fight, all while she's trying to mourn the death of her son. So when I came up to Oregon for law school, I didn't know going into law school what I wanted to do. But shortly after I got here, I was kind of adopted by a local attorney who happened to be an estate planner. And I went to work in his office. And I was in that office maybe a couple of weeks before I looked around and I realized what we were doing, what we had the capability of doing, helping people get their voice into documents. And I realized that both of the tragedies that had befallen my family were completely avoidable. And I decided right then and there that that's what I wanted to do. I want to help people avoid that kind of tragedy. I want to help people avoid those kinds of problems within their family, keep families together. And I'm passionate about that. And so that's how I found my gig.
That's awesome. No, that's great. So how long have you been in business, Joel?
So I have been so I just joined Schultz and Associates beginning of this month. And prior to that, I was the principal attorney at Cascadia Estate Planning for the last couple of years. And then I was with a partner for about 6 months before that. When I first went out on my own, I had a partner, a really lovely gal who'd been an estate planner for 50 plus years. Unfortunately, she had never had a partner, and neither had I. Neither of us knew how to do that. So neither of us knew how to share. So we're still friends. And I learned what I needed to learn, and then I kind of went out on my own and built this thing. I graduated from law school in 2015, passed the bar in 2017, after working for sponsors for a couple of years. So that kind of roundabout way of answering your question.
No, that's great. That's good. Just, how long have you basically been in the business is a great answer.
Well, and like I said, I had been apprenticing with an estate planner since the second year of law school, so 2013.
Right. So lots of exposure to the industry, and that's good. I mean, pretty much hands-on training or
right.
Learning. So that's wonderful. So how, now that you've joined Schultz and Associates, it's a little different. This conversation is a little bit different, but you can go by what you've learned throughout your time doing this. Because I think anybody who works even for a company, basically it's your business. It's you are the brand that you're trying to share with people. And so looking at it from that point of view, why would people want to work with you over other estate planners?
Have you met me?
I know why.
Because I'm fun, because I try to make the process and that's not to be cocky. It really isn't. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I really enjoy, one of the things that I really enjoy about what I do is that I do get to meet people kind of where they're at their level. And I feel like I'm fairly good at that. And I think that because of that, I can bring an accessibility to planning that maybe they hadn't experienced before. And I feel that the more accessible it is, the more that people can kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing, and have somebody guide them through the process, not as Mr. Know-it-all, but like just kind of as a friend, as a colleague, as an equal, that the process goes much smoother for everybody.
Well, it sounds like you have a true passion for what you're doing. And I think when anybody has a passion for what they're doing, they do it full bore. Otherwise, you're just doing a job. So
that's it. People ask, what other kinds of law do you practice? And I said, nothing. This is it. This is what I do. I really don't have any interest in anything. I have a list here of referrals that I can, if you come to me and you say, hey, do you do family law? I don't, but here's somebody you might call. I don't do personal injury. I don't do that stuff. I am an estate planner. That's what I love.
That's awesome. Well, then branding yourself as such is very important. So good to do, interviews like this and be member of, a group that supports you, which is great, like MEA.
Yeah.
So when you need advice, who do you talk to?
Well, so I've been fortunate. Like I said, since I got to law school, I started very early building a cadre of advisors. And so Scott Corey was the attorney that I originally went to work for, that I kind of apprenticed under. But since then, I'm happy to count, half a dozen or more close advisors. Plus, MEA is not the only group that I belong to. I belong to several professional organizations where I have access to centuries of legal experience. I am active on the listservs, both for estate planning, elder law, tax law, solo and small firm, at the Lane County Bar Association level, at the Oregon State Bar Association level, at the American Bar Association level, with Wealth Council, with Elder Council, with the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. So I have a lot of resources at my disposal. And now I have a really amazing attorney, Scott Schultz, right down the hall. So I feel like I am well placed to bring that vivacity that I afford my clients. And because one of the things that was really important for me about joining Schultz and Associates was that it wasn't just another big firm, right? They specialize in estate planning. It is a boutique law firm that specializes in estate planning and Medicaid planning, asset protection, wealth management, that kind of stuff. And that's the stuff I love doing. And so that's what I get to continue to do.
So I'm gonna conduct this interview a little differently than I have the others because doing a small business interview, you ask different questions. So since you work for a boutique firm, which is super cool, and I'm very happy for you that you joined them and that you're happy. I think what I should ask you more that would make more sense to people who want to find out, what do you do? What do they need to do to come to you to do their estate planning? How should they start that process?
You call 541-485-5515, and you will talk to Amy or Erica, and they will schedule you some time to sit down with us. The initial, so ideally they come to a workshop. I've been doing workshops since I was on my own, and even here at Schultz and Associates, they also see that, we're so aligned values-wise. They see the value in educating potential clients before they come in. Workshops are great because you can get a lot of information in a fairly short amount of time. You can kind of compare what you think you want with what you have. And if that's not clear to you, then that's when you come in and we do the initial. Obviously, in our current times, workshops are a little bit tougher. Although we're looking at a web-based solution to that. Hopefully, we'll be rolling that out early next month. But in the meantime, I'm doing a lot of initial consultations, and I'm doing a lot of them over the phone now. In fact, I just got off of one right before we started this conversation. So. And that's a little trickier because I like to draw pictures or paint pictures or what have you, right? And move all over the room and whatever, and use my hands. I'll catch myself using my hands and then realizing while I'm on the phone, wait, they can't see
you.
that. Whatever. I'm sure a lot of people are going through that right now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the easiest way at this point is just to give us a call, and they'll schedule some time. If I'm available, I'll usually take it. But a lot of times it's better if we can schedule some time and I know that it's coming. Ideally, we'll send you out a little packet of information that you can fill out for us. That gives us at least some idea of where you're coming from. The initial consultation is free, and at the end of that consultation, we'll figure out if, we'll compare what you have and what you've got with what you want, and see if what you have will get you there. And if it won't, I'll be honest with you, a lot of times I'll tell people, hey, what you've got is going to work, right? And really, the truth is two things. A, you bring me a trust and you ask me if it's going to work, and I'm going to tell you, yeah, it'll work. It'll do exactly what it says it's going to do without even looking at it, because I know that trust will do that. The trick is that really what you want it to do? When's the last time you updated it, right? So those are the big ones. The other one is, if you haven't a trust, if you don't have a will, if you don't have anything, you're in luck. As you've probably heard me say, everybody watching this, everybody has an estate plan. If you didn't write it, that's okay. Oregon's got your back, right? They've got plans for you. Yeah. And so, but if you're not satisfied with the government plan, then I advise people to come in and make their own plans.
Yeah, that I found doing my estate planning, there was way more information that I decided I wanted to have control of versus what I thought I had. I thought I had, we can make a will, blah, blah, blah. No, I am so glad that I did estate planning because it's not as expensive as you think, and it's well worth every penny you pay for it. So,
That's right.
especially when you have it detailed to where you don't have to think about it for a while, you know?
Yeah. And I think that you bring up a very interesting point, right? Which is cost, right? Well, how much is it going to cost? And, you know, that's not a tricky question to answer, but you have to be clear about what you mean by cost, right? Somebody is going to bear the cost, whether that means financially or in time or in energy. Somebody is going to expend the time, money, and energy to handle your affairs when you can't handle them for yourself, whether that's through incapacity or death. The question is, who is that going to be? Who is that going to fall on, right? And the more you make those decisions for yourself, the better position you put your loved ones in when they have to make that decision for you, potentially. So probate is expensive. Are trusts expensive? Yeah, they can be expensive. Are wills expensive? Not really. But for me, a will is a loss leader, because at the bottom of the will that I do for you, it's going to have the name of my firm. And when you kick it and your kids say, oh, look, let's just call this guy whose name's on the will, that's when I'm going to make my money, because probate is lucrative. The thing is, I hate probate because I hate asking for permission from the court. So I would much rather, like you were talking about, go through all of those details. And I mean, get into the nitty gritty, have some fun with it. Like you were talking about,
Yeah.
right? Oh, talking about death and dying is fun. Yeah, it can be. I think it's fun. And hopefully some of that passion is as communicable as COVID-19.
You heard it from Joe. So let me ask, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, because I have to make sure that these questions fit in the situation that you're in now, because it changed since I started doing these, which is fine. I mean, you're working within a company.
It's still small. We're still pretty, you know.
And you're still small. And again, even I consider, because I mean, I haven't always just ran my own company. I worked for, example, Speedy Glass, and I ran one of their offices, and we were a group of 5 people who had our own shop and yada, yada. Well, when I ran that, people always ask me, are you the owner? And I'd be like, no. Because we were huge, you know, we had like 300 stores throughout the US. So
wow.
And when they asked me that, I kind of envisioned, I wish I was the owner, but no, I wasn't the owner, but I did act like one, because people ask me that all the time.
Sure.
So when you love your job and you're passionate about it, people see that and they say, hey, you know, all right, do you own this? You know? So I think it doesn't really matter if you're an owner or if you're an employee, you can run it the same exact way. So where do you see yourself a year from now, Joel?
Well, that's interesting. So one of the reasons that Scott reached out to me is because they're kind of trying to look at where they want to be in a few years. And so assuming that this works out, and it feels like it will, I am more or less the exit strategy. And so, you know, best case scenario, a year from now, we're negotiating what that transition is going to look like. So.
Okay. So is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like people to know about what you do?
You know, depending on the audience, I feel like a lot of the folks at MEA have a pretty good idea. That said, you know, I think that it's important that, as much as I joke about it, you know, everybody's got an estate plan. If you didn't write it, blah, blah, blah. That is all true. And especially with everything that's going on, you know, it's interesting right now. There's kind of, people seem to fall into a couple of different groups. I appreciate both groups. There are some who, and I get it, you know, with all of the things that are going on, and maybe we're not we're not fully employed like we used to be and what have you. Spending that kind of money on figuring out what happens after you're gone is maybe falls down the list of priorities a little bit, and totally get it. But for probably an equal number of people, it's elevated that as a priority because they want to make sure that those things are in place, that there's a plan in place, and that they have a really good grasp on exactly what that means. The other thing I would say is probably the biggest misnomer that I face with regard to estate planning is everybody talks in terms of at their death, right? I have a will or I have a trust for when I die, blah, blah, blah. And I think that it's important to understand that most of us at this point are going to face some period of incapacity long before we die, potentially. Used to be, a few months. Now it's years. People can be incapacitated for an extended period of time. And that is just as important a factor of your estate planning as what happens when you die. Making sure that because a lot of people put so much emphasis on the will and when they die that they forget that will doesn't take effect until they do. What do you do in the meantime? If for whatever reason you can't answer for yourself, you can't speak for yourself, what does that look like? And I feel like that's maybe the most overlooked part of estate planning.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Joel. And of course, anybody that I ever come across that's looking to do their estate planning, I would definitely refer them to you because I know who you are and you're an amazing human being. So I wish you the very best in your new venture there. And can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, we are at 969 Willa Gillespie Road, which is just across the freeway from Valley River Center. And you can find us at schultzlaw.com. That's SCHULTZ-law.com, or area code 541-485-5515.
Awesome. And just out of curiosity, you can work with anybody, right? I mean, they could be in another state. Are you able to do that, or does it have to be in Oregon?
No, so I'm only licensed in Oregon.
Okay.
I'm only licensed in Oregon. Scott's only licensed in Oregon. I'm looking at being licensed in Washington, but for now, I'm only licensed in Oregon. And so anyone within the state of Oregon, yes. And we travel, we have satellite offices that we can use in Salem, Florence, and Roseburg.
Okay, great. Good to know.
Yeah.
So the entire state of Oregon, which is awesome, cool. And now, do you have to meet one-on-one with the person, or can you do things
most
virtually?
of it by phone. Most of it by phone, and we're kind of working out the signing period. The signing piece. That's the most difficult piece. The notarization, what have you. Oregon, and this may change that, but Oregon has yet to approve a remote notarization act, and so that's kind of the stickiest piece right now. But I have a strong suspicion that the state legislature is going to deal with that in the very near future. So that said, we can do a lot of it by phone. We are set up now to do Zoom meetings, but we also have a conference room that you can come straight in. We are currently still in the office. We currently still have clients every once in a while in the office, but we're set up for that as well. Our chairs in the waiting room are 6 feet apart. We wipe down the tables and pens and everything in the conference rooms with hospital grade sanitizer after every visit. So, but generally, that's something that we would do in person. Generally, I like to, I'll even come to my clients' homes. So.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, as usual. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll look forward to posting this out there so that people can find you.
That sounds great. Thanks, Sean, so much.
You're welcome.